Hi kids, it's Nani again, and I am coming with our Brambly Hedge stories. We are going to story number 3, and this is the autumn story. I was going to read to you outside because it's so beautiful, but I went outside and somebody started mowing their lawn, so there you go. So Brambly Hedge by Jill Barklam. Also, I think she did the illustrations. Autumn story. It was a fine autumn. The blackberries were ripe, and the nuts were ready, and the mice of Brambly Hedge were very, very busy. Every morning they went out into the fields to gather seeds, berries, and roots, which they took back to the store stump and carefully stowed away for the winter ahead. The store stump was warm inside and smelled deliciously of bramble jelly and rising bread, and it was already nearly full of food. Lord Woodmouse, who lived in the old oak palace, was out early with his youngest daughter, Primrose. "Now keep close to me and don't get lost," he said, as they made their way along the blackberry bushes. Primrose picked the berries nearest to the ground, while her father hooked the upper branches down with his walking stick. Oh, this is beautiful. So you see Primrose. Oh, those berries are so large compared to the little mice. He's pulling down some of the berry branches. Beautiful colors. The basket was nearly full when they were joined by old Mrs. Eyebright. "I've been looking for you," she said. "Bad weather's on its way. I can feel it in my bones." You'll have to ask people what that means, feel it in their bones. Usually older people can feel things in their bones and their joints, like weather. "We must finish our harvesting before the rain begins." Lord Woodmouse sent Primrose back to the palace, and then he went on to the store stump to find Mr. Apple to make arrangements. Soon parties of mice with carts and wheelbarrows were hurrying to the fields to gather the last of the nuts and berries. So they didn't tell Mrs. Eyebright, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." They listened to her. Remember, I said she was the oldest one, and she's got a lot of wisdom. Lord and Lady Woodmouse decided to help pick mushrooms, and they were just setting off when Lady Woodmouse cried out in alarm, "Where's Primrose?" Oh, I know that feeling. Look at that. Where is Primrose? She was nowhere to be seen. She wasn't hiding in the baskets or under the leaves or in the long grass. "Has anyone seen Primrose?" shouted Lord Woodmouse. "She hasn't been here," replied the mice gathering berries high in the blackthorn bush. "We haven't seen her," called the mice in the tangly hawthorn trees. Those must be the hawthorn trees. Nobody's seen Primrose. That's a scary feeling. The children thought she was at her grandmother's house, so a search party was sent along to investigate. Hot and out of breath, they knocked at the door of Crabapple Cottage. "Have you seen Primrose?" asked Wilfred. "We've lost her." Mrs. Apple shook her head and took off her apron. She joined in the search. Mr. Apple ran over to the gap in the hedge by the store stump. "Primrose, where are you?" he cried. "Primrose, where are you?" echoed the call all across the cornfield. So everybody is stopping what they're doing, even though what they're doing is important, to go find the child. Lord and Lady Woodmouse went back to the palace. They looked in the cupboards and under the beds. The store stump was searched from top to bottom. "Oh dear," said Lady Daisy. "She's such a little mouse. Where can she be? What shall we do?" They're looking everywhere. In the cupboards. All in the storehouse. Beautiful. Lots of food there. Meanwhile, Primrose, wandering along the edge of the cornfield, was quite unaware of her parents' concern. She had spent the morning picking wildflowers and gazing up at the blue sky. And after a lunch of blackberries, she had dozed a little in the sun. She was just going to help a group of mice she had seen gathering seeds in the ditch when she spotted a little round house high up in the stalks of the corn. I wonder who lives there, she thought. She decided to climb up and peep through one of the windows. So here she is in the grasses. Can you spot the house that she's talking about in the corn stalks? Way up here? Curiosity. As she looked in the window, she saw two pairs of bright little eyes peering back at her. I do beg your pardon, she stammered, and she began to climb down again. We were just going to have tea, a voice called after her. Won't you join us? Primrose found the tiny door and went inside. It was very cozy. There was a thistledown carpet on the floor, and the neatly woven grass walls were covered with books and pictures. The two elderly harvest mice who lived in the house were very glad to have a visitor. They sat Primrose down and gave her a slice of cake, and they handed her their album of family portraits to look at. Isn't this an adorable cottage? Two older mice lived there. They brought Primrose in. They have everything they need in two little rooms. When Primrose had been shown all of their treasures, she thanked the mice politely and climbed down to the ground again. She decided to walk to the edge of the chestnut woods before she went home. Some Brambly Hedge mice were still there picking blackberries in the last of the evening sun, but they were too busy to notice her. She peered into the grasses looking for feathers and other useful things. Hidden in the brambles, she discovered a very interesting hole. I wonder if anyone lives down there, she said to herself. And then she wandered into the tunnel. Oh my, this curious girl. But what an amazing tunnel back into the bushes. I think I would go there too. That would be hard to resist. It was very dark inside, but she could see just around the front door set in the walls of the branching passages. And as she went deeper into the tunnel, it became darker still. Then Primrose could see nothing at all. I don't think I like this place, said Primrose with a shiver. I'm going home. And she turned to leave. But with so many passages leading this way and that way, she had no idea which way she had come. She picked up her skirts and she ran through the maze of tunnels. Oh my goodness, talk about a maze. Look at that. Do you see where she came in? All the rooms everywhere. Leading up, leading down, and all across. At last she saw a glimmer of light and she ran towards it. The passage opened into a thick clump of brambles and briars under some tall trees. Primrose had no idea where she was. I can't see the oak tree, she said in a small voice, and I can't see the willows by the stream. I think I must be lost. It was getting very dark. Then big drops of rain began to fall and splash through the leaves around her. Primrose huddled under a toadstool. She tried not to cry. In the distance, a lonely owl hooted, and the branches of the trees above creaked in the rising wind. There were little scrabbling noises in the bush quite near to Primrose, and these worried her most of all. Oh, that is no fun. This is no longer just an adventure of curiosity, is it? It got darker and darker, and soon everything disappeared into the night. Primrose was just trying not to think about weasels when, to her horror, she saw 5 little flickering lights coming through the woods towards her. She could just make out 5 strange figures behind them. They were shapeless, bulgy, and seemed to have no heads at all. Primrose wriggled further back into the branches. The figures came closer and closer, and Primrose realized they were going to pass right by her hiding place. There's her hiding place under the toadstool in the brambles. And there are the 5 lights. But she can't tell who's carrying the lights. The nearer they came, the worse they looked. So she shut her eyes as she heard them pass, and only a whisper from where she was sitting. 1, 2, 3, 4. She decided to be very brave and take a peek at the 5th mouse as it went by. And it walked with a limp. It had a tail and whiskers and Mr. Apple's trousers. See, there she is hiding, peeping out just at the last mouse as it goes by. Of course, she didn't know they were mice. "Grandpa!" she squeaked with delight. As each of the figures turned around, she recognized them. It was Mr. Apple, Mrs. Apple, Dusty Dogwood, and best of all, her own mother and father. Primrose pushed her way through the brambles. "Primrose!" cried Lazy Daisy. "You're safe!" "The harvest mice said you had gone into the woods. It was so dark and so wet we'd almost given up hope of finding you." Then her father picked her up and wrapped her snugly in his cloak. Oh, yeah. How wonderful to be found when you've been lost. Primrose was nearly asleep by the time they got home. Lady Woodmouse carried her up to her little room, took off her wet clothes. A clean nightie was warming by the fire, and a mug of hot acorn coffee had been placed by the bed. There is her beautiful room. Wow. Now that looks cozy. I don't know why, but it's always so comforting to me to think of or to read of people who are cold and wet and they get the wet clothes off and dry clothes on and a cozy fire. "I'll never, ever go out of the field on my own again," whispered Primrose sleepily. Her mother gave her a kiss and smoothed her pillow. "Ease your whiskers, rest your paws, pies and puddings fill the stores. Sweetly dream the night away till sunshine brings another day." She said this softly, tucking Primrose into her comfy bed. Night, night, Primrose. Well, that was a sweet ending to a story. Next time we'll read about the winter story. I love you and I miss you. And I wanted to tell you something. See this that I'm wearing? This was my mama's, and I found it in the attic. I had put it there after I brought it back, after Nana had passed away. And I haven't ever tried it on before. And when I put it on, it smells like Nana. She used to always read to me, which is why I love to read. I read to my children, and now your mamas and papas and your grandmas and grandpas love to read to you. I hope someday you'll read to your children. I love you.